Two young boys, locked away in the Tower of London, vanished without a trace. Their uncle took the throne days later. Coincidence or calculated murder? Historians call it one of England's greatest mysteries. But what if the truth has been staring us in the face all along, and we've been blaming the wrong man for over 500 years? I've spent weeks buried in manuscripts, obscure history books, royal propaganda, trying to separate fact from fiction. What I found? It made me question everything I thought I knew about the royal family, history, and how easily a lie can last 5 centuries. Because this isn't just about two boys. This is about a cover-up, one that may have shaped the entire course of British monarchy. The story they teach in school goes like this. In 1483, 12-year-old Prince Edward and 9-year-old Prince Richard are taken to the Tower of London, supposedly for Prince Edward's coronation. Their uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, declares them illegitimate, locks them away, and crowns himself King Richard III. Then, silence. The boys vanish. No one sees them again. And history stamps Richard with the label child murderer. Let's dig into 3 massive red flags that rip the official narrative apart, and then I'll show you a theory that flips this entire case upside down. No bodies, no crime. In 1674, workers at the tower discovered bones of 2 children in a wooden box beneath a staircase. Everyone said, "That's them, case closed." But the bones weren't examined properly. No autopsy, no official inquest, just quietly buried in Westminster Abbey. And even when DNA technology were advanced, when Richard III's bones were identified in 2013, the palace refused to allow DNA testing on these remains. Why? No witnesses, no records. There are no documents, no eyewitnesses, no confession. Even Richard's fiercest enemies never accused him while he was alive. The first accusations came years later, from Tudor sources. Convenient. Shakespeare's villain. Richard III is the original Disney villain. Crooked back, murderous heart. But the source? Shakespeare, who was paid by the Tudors, Richard's enemies. It's propaganda dressed as theater. Now, here's what almost no one talks about. What if Richard didn't kill the princes? What if it was Henry Tudor who became Henry VII? The motive Henry had everything to gain. A weak claim to the throne. No noble blood. If the boys were alive, his claim would crumble. So what did he do? He married their sister, Elizabeth of York, unifying the warring factions and painting himself as a savior. Hidden documents. After taking the throne, Henry passed a law retroactively declaring the boys illegitimate. Why bother if they were already dead? And then there's Sir James Tyrrell's confession, supposedly the killer. But the confession only exists in Tudor accounts, decades later. No original document. No trial. Just a story. The shadow kill. What if Henry had the boys murdered in secret after Richard was gone and used the vacuum to blame him? It's cleaner. He becomes the avenger, not the murderer. Yes, talk evidence. Or more importantly, the evidence they don't want tested. In 2013, scientists proved Richard III's identity with DNA. They requested permission to test the tower bones next. Buckingham Palace said no. Why? If they're innocent children, what's the harm in confirming it? Multiple researchers have claimed quiet pushback when investigating this case. Not threats, but discouragement, red tape, silence. The closer you get to the truth, the harder it becomes to speak it. No ceremony, no fanfare, just quietly buried. No DNA, no closure, almost like someone didn't want answers. Let's pause. Strip away the theories, the timelines, the dynasties, the blood-stained politics of power. This story is about Edward, 12 years old, a boy who loved falconry, who practiced signing royal decrees with a hand far too small for the responsibility he'd inherited, a boy with a crown dangled just out of reach, who probably thought his biggest challenge in life would be wearing it with dignity. And Richard, just 9, the younger brother, mischievous according to some letters, devoted to Edward, always at his side, a shadow to his brother's son. He had no ambitions, just loyalty. They weren't schemers, they weren't rulers, they were children. And when they entered the Tower of London, they thought they were going to a palace. They thought they'd be safe, protected, guarded by family. Instead, the doors closed behind them, and history went silent. No farewells, no witnesses, no justice. Their final days, were they terrified? Were they confused? Did they cry out? Did they still believe, even in the end, that someone was coming to rescue them? This wasn't just a cold political maneuver. If these boys were murdered, this was a crime so profound it echoes across generations. Because it wasn't just about silencing heirs, it was about extinguishing childhood, about showing the world that no one, not even the most innocent, was safe from the ambitions of those who crave power. We often remember kings and queens as names in textbooks, but these boys never even got that chance. They didn't leave behind legacies, they left behind a question. And that's what haunts us. Not just what happened, but that they were used, abandoned, and then forgotten. So what happened? Maybe Richard did it. Maybe Henry. Maybe someone else entirely. The truth is, we don't know. And the silence left in the wake of that uncertainty is where speculation thrives. But then, there's Perkin Warbeck, a name that most people have forgotten. But in the late 15th century, it nearly changed the course of British history. He emerged in Europe years after the princes disappeared, claiming calmly, convincingly, that he was Richard, Duke of York, the younger of the 2 lost brothers. He said he'd escaped the tower, that he'd been spared by those ordered to kill him, that he'd lived in secret, waiting for the right moment to return. And people believed him, not just peasants and the desperate, but royals, nobles, foreign courts. He was welcomed by kings, given protection, given an army. This wasn't just a rumor, it was a full-blown crisis for Henry VII. Because if Perkin Warbeck was telling the truth, then Henry wasn't the rightful king. He was a usurper, a fraud, and the crown sat on stolen ground. Warbeck's presence alone shook the Tudor regime to its core. He inspired rebellions, he divided loyalties, he threatened the myth that Henry had worked so hard to build. Eventually, Henry captured him. He could have imprisoned him quietly, but instead, he made it public. He paraded him, humiliated him, then had him executed. Why? Why treat an obvious imposter like a national emergency? Unless, the danger wasn't that Warbeck was lying. The danger was that he was telling the truth. What if we've buried the wrong bones? What if we've canonized the wrong villain? What if history has protected the wrong crown? Because the truth is, we may never know who murdered the princes. We may never find the missing records, the secret confession, or the buried remains. But we do know one thing with absolute certainty. We know who benefited. So, who killed the princes in the tower? Was Richard a monster or a scapegoat? Was Henry the savior of England, or the architect of a perfect cover-up? Or was it someone we've never even suspected? You decide. But if you think this was wild, wait until you hear the theory about a royal disappearance from just 100 years ago, still hidden from public view. That story is right here